I had this one kid. He was scared of heights. Uh, his father was a lineman, kind of pushed him into it, and it was like his first time getting on a pole was actually at the school. So we get him his hooks, get him on the pole, and he's just frozen at like 6 feet. Like his feet were at 6 feet, just frozen. So I threw my gear on and I got up there with him, and I'm like, "Yo, Davey, like, how's it going? Like, what's up? What's going through your head?" He's like, "I don't know if I can do it." I'm like, "But I think he was 18 or 19 years old." I'm like, "Dude, have you ever been on a ladder before? You know?" He's like, "No, sir." I'm like, "You never been on a roof, cleaned gutters? Like, not none of, no, sir."
Mountain.
I'm like, "Dude, well, it's, 30 more feet to the top of this pole, and Big John is 120 feet, and that's part of your climbing cert is to get to the top of that one." I'm like, "Do you think you got it in you?" And he's like, "No, sir." That was his last day. I get this online all the time about, like, I get comments like, I haven't, nobody's hiring me. I've tried to apply. I tried to get in. I can't get a job. This trade seems silly. Like, you got to know somebody to get in. And then I just keep firing back with, you have to be persistent. Like, comments like that. Like, you got to be really persistent. You have to try every avenue possible. You have to be willing to leave your town, leave your state, leave your country, like,
Yeah.
go out and sell yourself and try to get your foot in the door somewhere, somehow. I've had this guy, this lineman, Ben Holmes, on the show a couple times. He was living in California. He's from California. He was in Texas. I think he was at the International Lineman Rodeo in Texas. He was trying to get in the door, trying to get in the door. He met a union rep from Local 66, Texas. And the guy was like, "We have an opening. If you can be here by Tuesday, I can get you in." And this was like Saturday at the rodeo. He flew back Sunday, got in a car Monday, drove all the way from California to Texas, and now it's spent the next, several years in Texas. Like, that's what it takes sometimes. It's
That's
like,
exactly what it takes.
take
Well, I got in when I got in that I don't think that in this is like 2004 when I got an apprenticeship, and I don't think at that time, and I could be wrong, just what I was exposed to, but I don't think there was a lot of lineman schools going on at that time.
yeah.
And I know Kansas City Powerline was having an issue because they would hire these apprentices off the street, they'd induct them into the union, and then they'd find out several weeks later that they were scared of heights and that the union wouldn't let them get rid of them. So they worked out this deal called a pre-apprenticeship, and they hired somewhere around in the neighborhood of 30 of us in July in Kansas City, and they spent 6 weeks trying to make us quit. It was like a cross between like boot camp and football practice, you know.
Yeah.
They could have beat me every day. I wasn't going anywhere. And that's where I got into helicopters with Wilson there. And that had always been, I just looked at those linemen. It was back before YouTube, but I was like, there's linemen out there flying around on helicopters, and I just wanted to do that so bad. And we stacked towers and stacked towers for months and months and months. We stacked towers, and I didn't know for sure if I was going to get on the wire crew when they started pulling or if I'd stay stacking towers, but I managed to get on the wire crew, and they were going to train us. We were going to fly on the skid and land on the top of a framer, and I couldn't even sleep. I was so excited. It didn't get old for a long time. It finally got more mundane. I don't know if it ever got old, but man, we did thousands of skid transfers on that job.
The best ride at Disneyland, it doesn't compare to anything like this.
No.
Like, hanging on the bottom of a rope, looking up 100 feet, you're 1,000 feet off the ground, and you're just like flying through the air, and then drop you on energized 500, and then you get in a little cart and you ride that cart down the wire all day long.
Yeah.
They're like, "What are you talking about?" But it is the
I remember
coolest shit, right?
one of the guys in Canada, we were talking about some movie star or something, and he's like, why would I want to see him? Because we were doing implodes on that job too. So there's explosions going off everywhere, you know. I hang from helicopters and there's bombs going off all around me. I do the real shit, you know.
That's facts, though. That's facts.
I think the last time I was on a helicopter was over the San Francisco Bay. I was sitting in a chair with this guy that I didn't even know him. I had just met him. And we were putting patch rod on this wire that we were going to be pulling out. We were pulling wire with wire, and the wire was shot everywhere. There was a spacer. It almost rubbed a hole through it. And so we had this, I don't know, 8 or 9 foot patch rod we were putting on, and right over the ocean. And somehow the pilot, he said that he spun around. We were long line, and all of a sudden he's coming up and he's got us trapped underneath the midspan, and he just keeps coming up and just keeps coming up. And finally we shot out of there and did this huge circle out over the water and lost all of our armor out in the ocean. And so you don't say things on the radio, but you're like, what the heck, So I was like, well, you're gonna have to take us back. So it's like, I think it was like 5 miles back to where we were landing. I got out and it's like, what in the world happened? And he's like, wind caught me and I was completely spun around. I didn't know. And I don't know if he was telling the truth or not. So we loaded up and we headed back out there and got to doing it again. And this time he got our heads under, both of our helmets were under the wire. He dipped down and jerked up just right. And it's just kept coming up. And I don't know. I know what that guy next to me, if he ever dies in an accident, what he's going to scream like, because we thought we were dead. And he had this Comanche scream that he put on with enough to curdle your blood. And finally that wire popped out over the top of our helmets. I have no idea how. And away we went on a big swing out over the ocean again. And I was like, take me back. And I think that was it. I told my boss, I said, I'm kind of moneyed up. I'm going to go home for a while. I'm lucky to be alive right now.
Dang,
I think that was the last time. When I was working in Canada, those dead ends on that DC line were 5,000 pounds. I think they were 30 feet long. It was 4-bundle. We couldn't get a spreader bar to hold. It would hold with positive pressure, but the bolt always broke. There was so much pressure, the bolt broke. So the only thing holding that spreader bar and keeping those insulators tight was the pressure of that hydraulic cylinder. And I was on one side of the tower doing something in the crane, and I noticed the other guys they were hanging some bells, a set of dead ends, and they had monkeying around with the jack somehow, and it hit that handle on the hydraulic cylinder, and the bells relaxed. And so they were just hanging there loose on that thing. And I remember thinking to myself, hopefully they don't go jacking on that, because it's going to jack it off the end of that and it'll drop on them. Didn't dawn on me to say something at all. And that's exactly what happened. They dropped 5,000 pounds of bells right on top of them in that crane, and nobody got hurt. It rained glass. So that kind of set me on a path of, we do need to be saying something. And I don't understand what goes on that we don't. I think it's human nature. I think that's how, like, kids get abused and don't say things. People just don't say things, but we sure need to. And I try on my job now to make it cool to talk about that. I write a lot of my own safety topics in the morning, and I get so sick of safety speeches because they're so worn out. And but I try to make it cool to talk about stuff like that, and hopefully we can. I can't imagine being an apprentice. When I was an apprentice, I can't imagine saying something. I know I've seen apprentices put up with some hair-raising stuff because they didn't feel free to say something, but we do need to change that. That's for sure. You think if you're up there in the pole and you've got your high vis on, and you got your hard hat on, and you got your cut-resistant gloves, and you got your traffic cones up, and you got nobody's touching the bucket, and you're following all these rules, and you think you're safe, and you're not, because you are responsible for your safety. Nobody else is. You can decide when you swing that hammer, if you miss, where's it going to go? If you're cutting with a chainsaw and you have to pull it out, where's it going to go? And it's stuff like that's the human behavior part of safety that I think could really make a difference. And actually Quanta was starting to do that with their sticky program when I left Patelco, and I thought that was a really good program. This look around this when order turns to chaos, where are you going to be? And I think that's something that can make a difference.
In a nutshell, for anyone listening that doesn't understand what the capacity model is, it's just when you look around and you see any hazard that might be out there and able to get you, it's like, have you baked in the capacity to fail safe? Because they are not going off this zero rate of incident thing that safety's been pushing around the globe. Like,
absolute
they want
lie.
Zero incidences. They call it right out. And they call it for what it is. It's a lie. And it's when you're going to have an accident. You will have an accident, but have you baked in the capacity to fail safely? So that's
Yes.
the sticky model, is looking for the, basically in the using the language of linemen. People laugh at the acronym sticky, but it's looking at the shit that can kill you. Like, try to
Yes.
find it beforehand, talk about it, find that shit that could kill you, and then deal with it. Does it need guards? Does it need, is it pneumatic? Is it like, what type of energy is it? And then how do you control that energy if it's dispersed in a way that you didn't plan? Humans have made everything, we continue to make things really complex, but human behavior is to actually cut corners. It's not to cut corners, it's to be efficient, right?
Right.
That especially line work. It's, you've noticed it. Like, how can we do the least amount of moves to get this job done, because it's a big
Yep.
job and we're using our bodies to do it. So if we can cut a corner, quote unquote, or like, find a more efficient way to do it, we're going to do it. So somebody was studying that. It's like, if you take a city sidewalk and you go 90 degrees, so you're walking straight and you turn 90 degrees. Well, if there's an opportunity to cut that corner, you're going to cut that corner, right? It's
Yep.
just human behavior.
Yep.
So you gotta, it's a bigger thing. Like, you got to look at everything from the engineering of whatever you're working with or on, the tools, the equipment, the structures, everything, and try to, like, plan for those ahead of time.
One of the stories I told my guys the other day about this 17-year-old girl that was in a jetliner that was hit by lightning, and everybody fell out of the sky 30,000 feet or whatever it was into the jungle. And the trees caught a lot of them. And I think there were 11 or 12, something like that, lived. And she was the youngest that lived. And they all landed strapped in their seats. And she remembered that her father had told her at some point that she needed to find a body of river and start walking downstream. That was what she did. And she left everybody there. Everybody that she left died, and she walked herself to safety. And my point to the guys was, you are responsible for your own
Yeah.
safety. I don't care how many regulations we have to work under. If we're working for this car company and they want us to dress up like traffic cones, we're going to dress up like traffic cones because that's what they said. But don't think it's going to keep you safe, because it's not. And show me how many accidents happen. The guy's like, well, I just didn't see him. I just don't believe that happened. But here we are, all glowing in the dark out there. And I think the argument could also be made, if you've highlighted everything, nothing's highlighted.
Mm-hmm.
But that being said, you operate inside this system that's been laid out for you, and it's still your responsibility to keep yourself safe. And until you can break yourself free and say something if you see it, like you said, or make a decision saying, you know what, I'm not doing that because here's why. And I think then you own your own safety. And I'm up in this bucket with an X100, and they fed it through. I don't have a radio. I can't see a person anywhere around me. I'm extended all the way out. They start pulling this wire. I'm starting to sweat. I don't say a word. I'm like, I'm not going to be the one to chicken out, And sure enough, a bump got caught. Started to pull it. Then I was screaming bloody murder. They heard me before the bucket got pulled over. But yeah, and nobody talked. I didn't know it was going to move. Nobody checked on me to see if I was ready, and so I learned something right then, that not everybody communicates the way that they should. And still was my responsibility not to have put myself in that position.
I'm on a big communication kick right now, and it just seems like a lot of the guests I've been talking to recently have these stories of incidences or a potential incident, and it all come down to, like, I saw it, or I had a feeling, or I seen something was off, and I didn't say anything.
Yeah.
And I know I can be just like yourself. I can be accused of it so many times. I still am, but it's still, I don't know what it is. Like you said, it's a human thing. We just don't like to, it's awkward or something. It's uncomfortable, but
what you said recently does kind of ring true too. I do believe most of us probably are good communicators.
Mm-hmm.
And I do believe probably any group that's worked together for a while is going to be good at it. It's going to be a lot better at it. I think maybe the danger comes in when you're throwing crews together out of the hall and people are just starting to work together, as opposed to somebody that almost knows what this guy's going to do before he does it because he worked with him for so long. Just the other day, just last night, in fact, I hired this cold apprentice, and he called me and said, I got my wife and kids that are in Portland, and I can't really find a spot to stay. I was wondering if you know if anybody had a spot. And I said, well, I said, if you're not going to kill my family, I said, you can move in here for a couple of days till you get it figured out. And he's like, well, I won't kill you. And I was like, well, that's really nice of you. So he moved in, and I had the guitar sitting there, and I'm just kind of waiting for him to mention it, you know. And my stepdaughter, she picks up the guitar and starts playing it, and he's sitting on the couch. He says, that's pretty cool that you play. So then she gave me the guitar, and she went to get her own because we were going to play a little bit. And he's like, oh, and you play too. I was like, I went kind of like that. And my wife is like, oh my God, here we go, you know. And I said, I don't know if you realize, but I'm kind of a big deal, you know.
I love it. I love it.
We put that song together with the Wilson guys that I worked with, where we did the wire pull through the song. That's kind of an interesting story. I wasn't working with Wilson at the time, but I called Chris Hughes and Bebop and Glenn, and I said, hey, I want you to call me. And I said, here's the script I want you to read when you leave a message on my voicemail.
That's awesome.
And so they all called in and left all these sayings down. And then we went into the recording studio and cut them together.
It sounds so good. Yeah, it turned out really good.
Bebop, he actually went and got a radio. He was mad because Chris and Glenn didn't get radios. He actually talked into the phone through a radio. But yeah, we cut it together, and everything in there, Chris Hughes had said at one time, you know, when we pulled over the river, he's like, yeah, we pulled over everything but a ferret farm. And I remembered that he had said that, so I had him say that. And then I had a guy on my crew in the Dalles. I was always trying to get out of work, and we were working by the airport there. And I think we were spacing, and he's like, it's too windy to go up there. He wanted to go fishing. It's too windy to work today, Clint. I don't know if I can go up there. So I'm the foreman. I called Chris, and I was like, man, it's kind of windy. I said, this windsock over here stuck straight out. And he didn't even bat an eye. He's like, yeah, that sock's been broke for a long time, you know?
So good. Girlfriend's Truck. Where'd you write that?
So that was wife number 2. I was going through a divorce after being married for 10 years. This is, I don't think I was a lineman yet. No, I wasn't. I was flat broke doing concrete. And she had bought this fancy truck, and we pulled up to this restaurant, and I got out, and one of our friends met us, and they go, so I don't think we were married at the time. And so this gal's like, her truck, your truck, our truck. And I was like, it's her truck, you know. That's what started that song.
That's dope.
And that's one of the ones that the production, I really want to redo the production on that.
I think it's great.
Yeah, it could sound a lot better for sure. I've had people call me on Facebook in the middle of the night. Would be like, we're down here in Georgia, sitting around the campfire, just listening to your song. We just wanted to call and say hi. My wife would be like, who is that? So I don't know. Totally. I never met him.
That's so dope.
It is. It's cool. It's. I like to act like I got a big head, but I feel blessed to have contributed something that might make a small flare in the trade, you know. I grew up listening to the Marty Robbins music, the old cowboy ballads too. Most of the songs I learned how to play on the guitar, the guy dies at the end. And I used to catch crap from that from people like, every song you sing, the guy dies at the end, you know. But yeah, most of the songs I do are stories, and that's one way that I remember the words, remember the lyrics, because that's just what comes next. These songs that kind of ramble around and talk more esoterically, I can't memorize them because I don't know what's coming next. But with a story, I always know.
Yeah.
But yeah, I love telling stories. I like to either watch in the crowd, whether it be around a campfire or a couch or in a big auditorium, and see somebody either tapping their foot or crying or laughing. I want to feel something. And I think that's what I get out of when I sing to somebody. I want them to feel something.
If you could go back to your 18-year-old self, what's one piece of advice that you'd give yourself?
Life is long. Mm-hmm. Life is short and life is long. Leave the doors open. If you're going to start closing doors, you're going to remove opportunities. I think if you leave the doors open, you still have a lot of choices. You can still make choices, but if you start closing doors through bad choices, you limit the direction your life can go later on. Maybe you don't limit it, but you definitely make it harder.
What's the most valuable tool in a lineman's kit?
Experience.
Nice.
experience. We're losing it, I think. But I do see these young, and like I call them kids too. They've all got their own families and everything, but they look like kids to me. But you wonder, are they going to pass that along? Are we going to continue the tradition that we have, I believe, done very well at is saying, hey, here's where I messed up once. Don't do that.
Mm-hmm.
I hope the litigation that, like you said, we can't talk about it because it's under investigation. I've been noticing that sneaking in more and more all the time, and I hope we can get around that. But yeah, experience for sure. What other substitute would there be?
Best piece of advice you've ever received as a lineman
As a lineman?
or in life?
I had when I apprenticed, we were rubber gloving, and I don't know if you guys probably hot stick there, and you're in Alberta, right?
In BC, yeah.
We went, BC, excuse me.
Yeah.
We went rubber gloving as soon as we turned hot there. I was in the bucket, and it sounds simple, but it's kind of rings true through life. And the guy's like, "Do you want a little bit more cover?" And I was like, "No, I'm good because I'm a cowboy, you know." And I caught 7,200 in the rib cage and kind of screamed a little bit. And he's like, "What'd you learn?" And I said, "I learned if you ask me if I want more rubber, the answer is yes." So
True story.
The advice is, and one old guy, he's passed away now, but his rule was, if you want more rubber, I'll get it for you. But if I want more rubber, you're going to put it up. And that was the rules of his crew. And I like that.
All right, guys, I hope you got some value out of the episode. I really enjoyed recording that. It was so nice to meet Clint. I hope you get over and follow, subscribe, all of his stuff, follow his music, push him to create some more stuff because I think he's super rad. Also going to ask that you follow, support, subscribe, all that good stuff to Powerline Podcast. We'll see you in the next one. And on our way out, we got another song from Clint. Peace.
Now we've all met the man who will never make a hand. He ain't learned a thing since his first day in the yard. He ain't smart enough to bump his head, and we're all shocked that he ain't dead. And his driveway don't go clear to his garage. He's skinning with a dull knife, been that way his whole life. We tell him not every man can do this job. He says just sit back and watch this house. He might learn one day, but not too soon. He's in a 9-line bind, 2 blocked by noon. He lives his life like a hammer, just searching for a nail. He breaks everything he's close to but his pride. Every job gives him the shakes, like he's knee-deep in rattlesnakes. The struggle bus is all we let him drive. He's skinning with a dull knife, been that way his whole life. We tell him not every man can do this job. He says just sit back and watch this house. He might learn one day, but not too soon. He's in a 9-line bind, 2 blocked by noon. Now he's not a lazy man, he's running at the bell. He's not afraid to work, it's just a word that he can't spell. Never been a doubt, he should have been washed out. It's obvious that he's got his wires crossed. One thing I know is true, if we all make it through, one day I'm sure be our boss. But he's skinning with a dull knife, been that way his whole life. We tell him not every man can do this job. He says just sit back and watch this hoss. He might learn one day, but not too soon. He's in a 9-line bind, 2 block by noon. He's in a 9-line bind, 2 block by noon.